Friday afternoon, and I have another little project to do. Got up to 50 degrees today, and if you have been anywhere near as cold as we have been, that's a welcome relief. I walked out to the shop here, and it's just some shirt sleeves, and it's comfortable. And I know it's going to get colder. It's only January still, but boy, I'll take it. I'll take it for as long as it lasts. So I'm walking through the warehouse at work a couple mornings ago, and just walking by some of the technicians getting ready to do their day, and looked down just in one of their tool bags and saw this sticking out of one of the pouches. Well, the problem's obvious, so I stopped. I asked him. I said, "What happened to your vice grips there? Where's the adjustment nut?" He looked down. He said, "Well, I guess it's been that way for a long time." He said, "I don't even use these." I said, "Well, you can't use these." I said, "They're kind of useless." I said, "We'll get you another pair." But I took these because they just went into the dumpster, and they're new. I mean, the name brand hasn't even worn off of the rubberized grip, and you know with use it would have. So brought them home, like I said, and this is a vice grip brand set of vice grips, and they're similar sized, and this is the adjustment screw out of them, and it fits these vice grips perfectly. So we're going to duplicate this, and I thought at first something else was missing off of these vice grips, because if you notice, you know, the old familiar brand that we have all had, they had this type of release lever. And then on the Craftsman, this is an older set of Craftsman vice grips, and these were made here in the States, while these were made after they switched over to Chinese production, but they still look fairly quality. Really just as every bit as heavy as these, but these vice grips have this type of release lever, and I have never been a fan of this release lever. When you get this locked down pretty tight on some work, and you go to trip this, you bend it right here. And I've had to straighten this several times, and I have another set over there that's done the same thing. So I've never been a fan of this type of release on the Craftsman. I have never had a problem with the vice grip type. But on this one, I thought something else was missing. This has nothing. There's no release lever here at all. So I thought, okay, another piece is missing, and I was going to pitch these myself until I figured I'll just screw this in and see if they're going to work, because there's nothing obviously missing. It's just different. So we're going to go ahead and lock these down onto themselves. And you may know this. You may have a set of these vice grips of this style. This is the first I've seen of them. But if you lock these down, where they're going to cinch up pretty nice and tight, to open them, you just simply pull very, very slightly. And probably could even one-hand these things if my hands weren't slick, but they pop open pretty easily, and they're locked down pretty tight. But they kind of detent to right there, and then you put a little more pressure, and they snap right open. Okay, I'm willing to give them a try. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and see if we can't make these things a tool again. Now, one of the things I noticed about this adjustment screw and the one out of the vice grip, or the Craftsman, the older Craftsman, they're the same size, same pitch, and they're both hardened. That's a piece of hardened steel. It's hard back here in the threads. So I have a piece of 5/8 drill rod, and I've already cut it the length, faced one in and center drilled, and I have it over there in the lathe. We're going to single point these threads, and it's 7/16 14 pitch. And then when we're finished, we'll shape this end of it, leaving a little bit extra, so we'll grind off the center hole, and then we're going to turn it around, put it in a 7/16 collet, and I'll knurl this end and face it off, and then we're going to heat treat it. And just a little bit of work and a little fun project. We're going to have a nice set of useful pliers again. So we'll bring you along for those steps. Okay, so I have this work set up, and I'm going to turn the threaded portion, which I have laid out to this little scribe mark that you might see. And I've left enough to cut this center hole and all that out and still have my full-length thread. Just about to right there. And then I still have plenty of stock left over for the head part. So the major diameter, 437 thousandths. It's 437 and a half. Not really worried about that, but I'm going to turn this to this shoulder down to 437. I'm just going to use this set of calipers here just to get it close. I've got these set to 450, and then I'll just micrometer measure it down to my finished dimension, and I'll just come back for little bits and pieces of that. It's just going to be some turning. So we're going to go ahead and get started. By 60 thousandths in this cut. Got about 130 thousandths left to take off. We went by the dials, but I want to be sure here. It's an adjustment screw for vice grips. It's not that critical, but let's try to be as close as we can get. Okay, that is 438. So I'm going to touch in just about a thousandth or so. Just bump my dial just a hair. And let's finish our cut. Alright, now I'm going to do an undercut here for the end of the thread. I'm going to go down to the minor diameter, 344. That is 93 thousandths difference. So I'm just going to do that with a cutoff tool. I just eyeballed that on the dial, but that's just going to give me an idea when to stop my thread. So we've got our undercut. Get rid of this. Now I'm going to get set up the thread. I have to go get my fishtail and get this thing squared to the work, and come back when we're getting ready to cut some threads. I've got to get the machine set up, and I've got to move the camera to do that. Get her set up for 14 threads per inch. See you in a minute. Okay, I'm taking my first pass, just checking with a pitch gauge, and we're at 14 threads per inch. So we'll take you through one or two passes. This is not real exciting stuff, but we'll back this out. What I did is I went ahead and turned the end of this down to match that. So I'm only, I'm not threading too much, and I have left plenty to cut off and leave that in without a center hole, which I think is kind of important since that's going to be a bearing surface. So I've got the lathe slowed way down, not as slow as this lathe will go anyway, and we're going to take another pass here. Somehow this is more exciting when Mr. Pete or Chris or Chuck or somebody like that does it. But I'm just going to carry on, and when I get down to about the final pass, we'll come back. Just about the time I take the vice grips, and I'm just going to thread them on there and see if we've got it. So we'll be back in a little bit. Okay, I've got to hold this handle out of the way, but it's threading on there pretty nicely, and no more slop than the other one has. Alright, so we're going to call it threaded. I'm going to just knock the points down just a little bit with a file and clean it up. Okay, that fit okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and part the work off, and then we're going to turn this thing around in a collet chuck face, and then we're going to knurl this little knob, and I'm just going to grind the end of this off over there on the belt grinder, and then we'll heat treat this thing, and we'll be finished and have a working set of pliers. Okay, I put the collet chuck on the lathe. I have a 7/16 collet, and I have the work just gripped by the threads, and the collet doesn't really do any damage to the threads. And put my knurling tool on here, the pinch type, and I'm just going to put a knurl on the end. I have already, let me move this out of the way for a second. I've already faced this down to about the width I want, and since I lost a little bit on the diameter of the original, I didn't really have stock this big, I'm going to go for a little more width just to give me some grip. I'm just going to put a gentle knurl, and then I will put a chamfer on each end, and that's going to be it. Alright, so I'm just going to start the lathe, and I'm going to start gently turning the knob until I get a good knurl. Locking the carriage. I'm just stopping, checking what it looks like. Get my other light on. Okay, we're going to go a little deeper. Okay, we've got a pretty nice knurl on that. I haven't cleaned it yet. And now I'm just going to take and just put a little chamfer on the end of that, and we're going to call it finished. For what it is, I think it'll do the job. And that's it. We'll get it wire brushed off and cleaned up, and we'll install it on the pliers and see if we have a working tool. Alright, so that's what we ended up with. And let me go get the original. So this is the original. It's going to go back into that set of grips there. I haven't heat treated this yet. I'm not going to show the heat treating because it's just a matter of, I'm going to hold it by the knurl here and just heat it in my matte flame till it is a very bright cherry red, just for a minute or so. Then I'm just going to dunk it down in my quenching oil. Then I'll brush it back off till I get bright metal. Then I will slowly heat it until I get about a purplish blue. I'll quench it again, and that is basic heat treatment on something like this. But it does, it goes in very nicely, and that knurl gives me a good enough grip, and it turns in there smoothly. And I'm not going to lock these down under any kind of pressure because I haven't heat treated that yet, and I don't want to deform the end. But it seems like it's going to do the job. yeah. So there you go. Saved it from the trash bin. So anyway, yeah, guys, quick little project. It was fun, and I'm glad you guys came along with me. We will talk to you after a while. Have a good weekend. Thanks for watching.